record on the screen. Okay, Healthy Cooking Series is now recording. So this is session 3. Let me go back to share screen. Good one, Helen. I appreciate that. Nobody would be watching anything if I didn't record it. Oh yeah, excellent. Thank you. All right. So where are we? All right. So let me get some admin out of the way. As Courtney said, food is medicine. But before I do, let me get some admin out of the way. First, I'm recording this, and you will get a handout that I'm showing you here. I'll put that in the share. Dr. Sauerwein and her admin team will put out the link to that share. And the link to that share also contains the previous 2 recordings and the previous 2 presentations. You are on this, you are muted, and I've turned off the ability to enable your video. So nobody is going to accidentally make a mistake and come on camera. So rest assured that's taken care of. If you have a question or comment, I have Helen in studio here in my kitchen, literally 5 feet 10 inches away. And use the chat facility on the bottom of your screen. Message in a question or a comment. Helen can usually answer it. What she can't answer, she will direct to me right here. And I will continue unless interrupted by my sous chef. Your supervisor. My supervisor, correct. All right. So what are we doing today? Well, let's see, do this. Mediterranean diet. This is boilerplate stuff. If you've been to one of these before, you've seen this. We eat Mediterranean here. I am a Mediterranean chef. Helen is Greek, I'm Italian. So the essence of Mediterranean cooking is mostly related to Italian and Greek. It has a wider expanse there, but if you were to say Mediterranean cooking, you'd immediately think of Italy and Greece. But it's a wider style. The Mediterranean style is more than just a diet. It's about a lifestyle, enjoying life, enjoying your food, enjoying your family, enjoying your guests. I love it when somebody comes to my house, knocks on the door. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Hey, we came by for coffee. Oh, come in. That's what you see, and that's part of the lifestyle and the diet, and it's just la dolce vita, the sweet life. Benefits, anti-inflammatory, rich in antioxidants. We know all that, and hopefully what I show you today will go to that. And without any further ado, I'm going to show you a recipe from my cookbook, pasta e fagioli. Or if you're from the Northeast, it's pasta fagioli. But it's pasta and beans. So a fagiolo is a bean, fagioli is beans. And string beans are fagiolini, which are little beans. So you get the idea. So it's pasta and beans. Now I'm going to do a little twist on it today, because I'm going to eliminate the pasta. Now you could put pasta in this, but I'm going to eliminate it, and I'm going to use a substitute, and I'll tell you what I'll be using. Excuse me, I have a lingering cough from my bout with COVID 3 weeks ago. So you'll excuse me if I do that every once in a while, so I apologize. What I was asked to do, and what I think is very important, especially for a soup, is talk a little bit about, I'll talk a little bit about knife cuts, and I'll demonstrate knife cuts. Then I will demonstrate putting together the recipe. I'll talk about substitutes for pasta. And in this application, I'm using barley. Sometimes I use barley, sometimes I use farro. So I substitute the pasta for some healthy grain. And it really works well. That barley or farro really works great. I'll talk a little bit about protein additions. And also another way perhaps to make this alternative, what I would call order of production or cooking styles, so to speak. I'm going to show you a cooking method that not everybody might have the time to do. But I'll show you alternative cooking methods and alternative additions for either diet or lifestyle or and especially cooking methods if you just don't have time. Yes.
Briefly about the Mediterranean diet.
Go right ahead, Courtney. Absolutely. If you're go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure everybody knows what a Mediterranean style diet actually is in terms of the food. It is a culmination, like you said, of a lifestyle as well, not just the diet. Most of the studies represented also include a lifestyle component, which includes exercise as well as close community. A Mediterranean style diet would be a lot of whole, unprocessed foods. So lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, those healthy fats like olives and olive oil, weekly consumption of fish and poultry products. And we want to eat a large variety of foods. The more variety we have in our diet, colors and types of foods, we're gaining all different nutrients from the combination of them versus eating the same thing over and over, as well as the actual experience of eating, making it, as you said, like a very social thing and enjoying every aspect of our food. So it's a little bit more about what exactly the Mediterranean diet entails in terms of food. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, absolutely correct. And a very, very good point about colors. The more colorful your dish, the more colorful your plate, the better the food generally. So you do want those colors, and hopefully you'll see some colors in this soup. This is the recipe. I will go through it as I do it. And again, you'll have a handout if you want to do it later on. I have it printed out in front of here. Excuse me. So one of the things about the soup is, it's the note at the bottom right, it's much better if left to cool while flavors come together and then you heat it. So through the magic of television, you're going to see a finished product. In other words, I made a pot of soup at about 10 o'clock this morning. It's cooled down, and when I reheat it, it's just going to be this beautiful mess of stuff that you just going to want to dig into. Because if I just put together this soup here, it's not going to be done in 45 minutes. You can't eat it in 45 minutes. But I'll show you how to put it together, and then I will show you a finished product because I already have it made. Shameless plug for Courtney, and this is in the handout, and you can contact the office for all of that. Shameless plug for me, and as a special to anybody attending this, I'm offering a coupon for 10% off chef services, private dinner, what have you, and I'll give you a coupon code. You contact me and you book something with me, I'll give you 10% off for having been here. And that's all my contact information. So let's go ahead and get to it. This is my kitchen. This is where I do all the magic. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with any questions, just chat in. Excuse me. I'm going to demonstrate some cuts here because that's what we have to do first. So what's in this is mirepoix. We're going to start with mirepoix, which is onions, celery, and carrots. So let's make sure I'm doing that correctly. All right, great. So the hardest thing to cut is a carrot. And any chef will tell you that. That's the hardest vegetable to cut. So I made the recipe I've shown you, I made a half a batch, so I'm going to make the other half batch today or this afternoon. So I'm going to cut the ends off without cutting my fingers, always claw. All right, get rid of that. I love this Y peeler. I mean, there are other types of peelers that you're probably familiar with. This kind of thing. I love the Y peeler because you can just put it right on the cutting board, 45-degree angle, and off we go. Turn it around. So with the carrot, and the celery and the onion, I'm gonna do a small dice. Small dice is basically 1/4 inch square. So I'm gonna get this into 1/4 inch square. Another really handy tool is a bench scraper. Important safety tip, dollar store. No problem. Dollar store has a lot of good stuff.
Frank,
just-
is there any specific knife that you'd recommend or safety tips when you have your cutting board and your knife?
I don't recommend any particular brand of knife, but the most common knife is going to be a chef's knife. And this is a chef's knife. I have another chef's knife. Great question, thank you. This is a high-end knife that my son bought me. Absolutely beautiful. This is a Cutco knife. But the most popular knife in your arsenal is a chef's knife. And these are two examples of a chef's knife. Now I can give you a quick rundown of other types of knives. Paring knife for fine work. A boning knife or fillet knife. So if you were using this to bone or debone or fabricated chicken, you would use this. You might also use it to scallopini meat. So these are popular knives, but the most popular knife in your arsenal is going to be your chef's knife.
And
I use. Go ahead.
that's gonna be the one that you would use mainly to chop your veggies, not a paring knife or a paring knife.
No,
Correct.
you would not use. I would use the paring knife to supreme an orange. And so supreme an orange is where you cut the skin off. I would use a chef's knife to cut the skin off, and you literally work your way into each one of those little grooves and take out the flesh of the orange. And that's a very fine work. I might also use this to peel the skin off the onion, at least get it started. But so I can just use my fingers to do that. But if it's really difficult, I would use the paring knife to do that. So this is fine work, boning work, and your chef's knife is going to be really what you use about 95% of the time. If you're cutting bread, you will always want to use, where is it? Come on, Frank.
I definitely noticed when I switched from using the tiny paring knife to chop veggies to the chef's knife that my life became that much easier, and it definitely sped up cooking time and getting more veggies into my food. So
Oh yeah.
I definitely can say that a chef's knife is completely worth it, and a sharp one at that.
Where's my bread knife? I probably took it out, that's why. Oh, here it is. I took it out already. That's why I couldn't find it in the slot. If you're cutting bread, you always want to use a serrated knife. I don't know if you can see that. This bread will not cut very well with that. You'll end up smashing it. So, and in any knife work, oh, this is really good discussion. Any good knife work, first of all, you want your knife to be sharp. Because more accidents happen with dull knives than sharp knives. You could slip off and whatnot, and you have to push through. So you don't have to sharpen your knife a lot if you're very careful with it. You never want to be banging it and scraping it across the board directly. If you need to do that, you would use the back of the knife maybe to clear stuff off the board. There's also a honing steel. And I'll switch to a wider view here to show you that. I know it's there somewhere. Okay. The honing steel. Even though your knife doesn't necessarily need to be sharpened all the time, the blade it might look like that, but over time, it might just kind of need to be straightened a little bit. And that's what the honing steel does. So honing steel, you would hold your steel at 90, perpendicular to the bottom of the table. The knife is at 45 degrees and also 20 degrees. So 45 degrees on the steel, 20 degrees off the blade. And you're just basically going to pull down 45-degree angle and 20 degrees off the blade with the knife.
Now, is that the same? Is that the same as sharpening, or is that
No.
straightening?
This is honing the blade, basically. And the blade can, it may get a little bent every now and then. It's like micro bent. So it's really a nice point, but over time, with every use, it just may get a little out of line. And by using the honing steel, you can line everything up. So that's why you see chefs doing that. They're not sharpening it, they're honing it. More questions on knives. There we go. All right, so I peeled my carrot. Very difficult to do. This is the most. So I'm starting with the most difficult one. So you may have to do a little waste here, waste of product, but we can reuse it. So I'm just going to cut here to create a little bit of a flat bottom. So I have something stable. Thank you. So I'm going to try to make 1/4-inch slices. You could probably buy these already done at the store. It's fun trying to cut yourself. And I don't know how many times this is the most difficult one to cut. Carrot. And I'm going to do that, and I should be able to do the rest of it. And here we go. Can't tell you how many times in culinary school you had to do knife cuts. Do this for the chef, and they grade you on the knife cuts. It was so much fun, and I'm being sarcastic. This I could chop up. I'll use that, no big deal. All right. So I have it's a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch, but that's okay. This isn't culinary school, it's dinner. The primary reason we do these cuts, and they don't all have to be exact, because chef instructors will actually take out a ruler and measure your knife cuts. It's absolutely ridiculous, but we laugh at it. The reason you do this is so that things cook evenly. So if I have a chunk of carrot like that and a chunk of carrot like that, everything's gonna cook unevenly. So my main objective is to have things cook evenly. So I want to make sure my fingers are behind the blade. And what I've done is I've lined all this up, and with a very sharp knife, you're not going to be doing that. I shouldn't do that with my knife. Treat your knife with respect. You're going to keep your point of the knife down on the board and just rock. Now, I'm going slow. I could go faster, but I'm just showing you that to show you how to do that. All right.
What is the reason why the mirepoix is always the celery, onion, and carrot? Like, what's the reasoning behind that?
French cuisine. It's the aromatic base to almost every soup and sauce. And it just creates aromatics. The carrots are sweet. Celery imparts a nice earthy flavor. The onions are also nice and sweet. And it's just a traditional, and you can tell by the name, mirepoix, the traditional French additive. And it's the base for a lot of soups and sauce. And it just imparts a base of flavor.
Gotcha.
And we're going to sweat these vegetables. We don't throw them in there raw. When I say sweat, I'm gonna put them in a pot with a little olive oil and saute them down. And when I say sweat versus saute, or it's translucent versus saute, the technique there, you want to get them a little, they're a little brown. You start to see what's called a Maillard reaction, where it gets this, the sugar starts to brown around it. But a sweat, you just want it to be translucent. You don't want that browning. And so you just want that translucent. So we're going to sweat these as opposed to saute. So sometimes in the cookbook you see, saute vegetables until translucent. Well, yeah, technically you're just sweating them. All right.
And carrots this time of year are actually really beneficial to our immune health, believe it or not. Carrots are, they contain a provitamin A, so it's not actually a straight vitamin A form, but in the diet, in the body, they get converted into vitamin A, which is essential for our immune health. And the other thing about carrots that some people may not know is that they need a fat in order for the body to absorb them. So if you're making steamed carrots for dinner, you may want to add a drizzle of olive oil on them, maybe a little bit of a grass-fed butter. A carrot soup this time of year, along with like some ginger and onion and garlic, can be an amazing immune supportive soup if you have a cold. That is absolutely my go-to. So I love that carrot is part of the base of this soup right now, especially as
I'll tell you,
some
some recipes have in tomato sauces they put sugar. I never put sugar in my tomato sauce. I put carrots in my tomato sauce. I get that natural sugar from it. And let me switch cameras to show you what I'm doing, and then I'll finish with these knife cuts. Pardon me. So I have this under a flame here. Put the carrots. There's my pure olive oil. What's the difference between pure olive oil and extra virgin olive oil? Basically, extra virgin olive oil is the first press of the olive, and pure olive oil is the second press. So what that means is the pure olive oil has a higher smoke point. So if you're sauteing things, you want to use pure olive oil. If you're finishing, then go ahead and use extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is obviously more expensive. So cut that off. So I'm going to small dice this. So I use pure olive oil in the for that, and I keep it in one of these dollar store squeeze bottles. I'm telling you, go to the dollar store, you find all sorts of really cool stuff, and hopefully you can hear that sizzling going on. What's that? The $1.25 store. Sorry, I was reminded. Excuse me. All right, so another animal. This is less difficult, but still can be a challenge. So what I do is I keep the root on right here, just to hold it together, and I'll just do slice this way, so it all kind of stays together. And I can hold it without it all flying apart. So let's finish that. So now, all I have to do is gently hold it and it'll all stay together. I already showed you how to do a small dice, so I'll just do this a little quicker to get through it. So a small dice is a 1/4 inch, medium dice is a 1/2 inch, and a large dice is 3/4 of an inch. And why I might use a large dice? Well, stews, hot roast, stuff like that. So you actually want to see these things. And I'll demonstrate a couple of different cuts on the carrots and celery to build the stew. So this guy is going to go in there. Going to turn around and do this.
Hey, Courtney, can you weigh in while he's doing that about the health benefits of celery? I know, like,
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't have as much taste, but it has fiber, and there's all this celery juice and
Oh,
all
yeah.
kinds of things out there about celery's like gonna save us all.
Yeah, I know, right? If only one food was like that, that's like the magic pill.
Right.
Celery is not a magic pill, but yes, it's high in water content, which is good for when we're thinking lower in calories. I often like to use celery. I personally find it to be tasting like salt, like a salt-like item. So somebody who's maybe trying to look for a replacement for some type of chip, it has a good crunch to it, and I think it definitely like can get like a almost take on like that salt flavor in a way once we reduce our salt intake. It has a lot of antioxidant properties, which makes it good for blood pressure, reducing blood pressure. Celery seed extract as well. Let's see, what else does celery have? Gosh, fiber for sure, which we know high fiber intake may help with lipids. And as everybody, it seems like most of my clients this week seem to have constipation. I deal with a lot of IBS.
I'm not here.
Anyway, we can include more fiber in the diet. So celery can be one of those things. Yeah, there's so many health benefits of celery and like all these base vegetables, that it's not just one food, but we need to give celery a little bit more of a spotlight. So
Yeah, it's yeah, I use it in almost all my sauces, celery, carrot, onion, almost every sauce and food. So the onion, a way to avoid crying. Now, I don't usually have a problem, so I'm not good to go by. But you see, I cut that onion in half because I made a half a batch this morning, so I have the other half of the onion here. Keep the root on. The root right here is going to have a lot of that juice, and if you have a crying fit with onion, that'll help. Also, keep it refrigerated after you cut it, or even rinse it a little bit. So I'm going to cut the top off, and this is where I might use the paring knife. But as you can see, I can use my thumb and finger to pull the skin off. And I'll show you an easy way to cut an onion, dice an onion. Oh, there's a little bit of impurity there. Cut that out. We don't want that. So it's actually, there's some sugar. It's the onion is on its way. So that's, you see that browning, that's actually the sugars in the onion. So I just cut that out. Not going to kill anybody. So first, make some slits from this side to the root. As many, it depends on how fat the onion is. So there's something, keeping the root on helps also keep it together. Then I'm going to rotate the onion. And you'll see the onion has these rings on it. If you were to just take your knife and kind of follow the rings. Now I'm ready to dice this thing. Like this cut, that cut. Now I'm just going to cut down. And I should have all these really nice small dice on them.
Yeah. So onions, they help support our detoxification pathways in the liver. They contain beneficial antioxidants. Again, these compounds in plants, they're called phytochemicals, or I think we kind of generally refer to them as antioxidants, but they contain compounds like quercetin. You may have heard that being thrown around with COVID, quercetin, if you were in the kind of the complementary and nutrition space. Also allicin, which is the same compound found in sulfur. So you hear a lot of people say that they pass gas with onions, and usually it's because in the large colon where you have our bacteria in there are fermenting part of those sulfur compounds. But onion, great for supporting our liver's detoxification pathways.
All right, so the reason why I went with the celery and carrots first. And they take a little longer to sweat than the onion. Also going to use a nice bit of salt here. Salt helps draw out that water and that flavor. So I'm going to get this going. So
How
let's say you don't have the time to do all this, or sit at the stove and watch this thing go for a couple of hours. If you have a slow cooker, you don't have to worry about sweating and sauteing vegetables. Just throw everything in there. Just throw everything in the slow cooker and turn it on. And 8 hours later, you'll have a pretty decent soup. Not a problem there. If you don't have a slow cooker, well, if you have an electric oven, because I know some people don't like to keep the oven on for long, but if you're in the house and you don't have a slow cooker, you could just take an oven-proof pot, like my finished product here from this morning. Put everything in the pot, stick it in the oven, 200 degrees, and it'll act as a slow cooker. So there's another way to do that. So let's get to the garlic, and then we're at home stretching. I'm just basically the rest of the stuff gets thrown in. Garlic, the clove, give it a nice horizontal on the knife, give it a nice smash. And you should be able to just pull that skin off. And depending on the freshness of the garlic, and I'll have to have a word with Harris Peter on that. If the garlic is fresher, the skin comes off very easily. The more stale the product, the harder it is. And there should be this little nub there. I like to get that nub. So there's a garlic clove. You'll notice I'm making a half batch. And so we'll show you how to chop garlic. So we'll get the skin off of here. That looks good.
Courtney, this is Helen. While Frank is doing that, someone typed in a question in the chat. If you wouldn't mind taking.
Oh, I'm just seeing that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the chat says, any place for canola oil in the Mediterranean style diet, or should it always be olive oil? Good question. In a lot of the government guidelines, they will share canola oil as a source of a healthy fat. Canola oil is made from soy. In the nutrition space, it's a bit controversial. So soy crops are heavily sprayed by pesticides, and the processing part of creating these plant oils like canola, safflower, rapeseed oils, the way they're extracted actually changes the health benefits of the oil. So I would say your best bet is to go with olive oil. Other oils you can use at a higher heat cooking would include things like avocado oil. The price point of avocado oil is a little bit higher than even olive oil these days, but I believe the smoke point of avocado oil is a little bit higher than that of olive oil.
Yeah, peanut oil as well. The thing about some restaurants and food service will mix corn oil and olive oil. A, to raise the smoke point, and B, to cut costs.
Yeah.
So there's that. I don't generally use canola oil. What I do use it for is if I need something flavorless. Sometimes you absolutely have to cook something in a flavorless oil. You don't want the taste of olive oil imparted into your product, generally. So if you want a flavorless oil, that's where you would go to from a culinary standpoint.
So Courtney and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the differences, so like in the canola and some of the vegetable oils, as you mentioned, Courtney, they're processed to get the oil out of the foods, as opposed to, as Frank mentioned, some of the oil, like the olive oil is pressed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of purely coming from the olives as opposed to going through some sort of process to get the oils. And that's
Right.
a big difference in some of the health benefits. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, the canola and those other seed oils, I believe, are processed in like a petroleum, like I think they're processed with like a hexane extract to extract it. So when you think about hexane, a petroleum product, there's where you're kind of ruining that profile of the oil. So you're better off if you're going to do something soy-based, do an organic soybean or an organic tofu in its whole food form versus the oil itself.
Yeah, see, and that's fine. You know, my mom and grandmother, they usually pan fried their cutlets in Weston, and they live to near, you know, basically 102 and 90. So you know, it also depends. Yeah, you can go overboard. So there's nothing inherently wrong with using a corn oil or a canola oil from time to time where the situation dictates, where you have to have a high smoke point, you have to use a lot of it, or you want something flavorless. But generally speaking, yeah, I use either pure olive oil or extra virgin olive oil. All right, so let's get to the garlic. I skin the garlic and I'm going to chop it. So I could spend a lot of time doing this, but there's a technique. If you have your chef's knife, you're just going to, on the board, keep your fingers up and away, and you ever seen Jacques Pepin do this? You need to see a video of him doing this. He does this. He's like a drummer, and the knife goes back and forth so quickly. He's a magician with the knife. It's unbelievable. I'm not that good, but it is really a showman doing that. Now, that's a chopped garlic. What if your recipe called for minced garlic? Now, this recipe doesn't call for minced garlic, but I need to mince this. Now, I could get a garlic press and dirty that, or I could take a little salt here for abrasiveness. And I am very abrasive. So there's an abrasiveness there. And I'll take the flat end of the knife and just smash down. And the abrasiveness of the salt will help mince this garlic right on your cutting board. I could go further, but there's your minced garlic.
So there's a little tip to increase the antioxidant in garlic, Allison. That's the when you're taking like a garlic pill, you might see those on the market for blood pressure or lipid control. So the active compound, if you smash the garlic and wait about 10 minutes, the allicin content of the garlic it increases at about 10 minutes. So if you can wait that long to add it to your cooking, you'd increase the antioxidant capacity of your food.
Well, I did not know that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stage my production in the future to hold off on that. Hold off on that garlic. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
If it's just a few minutes, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So you could like chop the garlic or smash it ahead of time and set it off to the side, then chop your other veggies and then come back to the garlic.
Absolutely. So basically just I would have maybe done that chop first, set it aside, done the rest of the mirepoix, put it in there, and by the time I was ready to add the garlic, it would have bloomed, so to speak. Right?
It would, yep.
Yeah, excellent. All right. And the reason why I add the garlic last is if you let that burn, it doesn't take too long, just like a minute. You let that burn, it'll get bitter. Okay, so where am I in this stage of development? Okay, I got this mirepoix going, plus the garlic. I'm looking at my recipe because sometimes I forget things. And I want to be cognizant of time, but I guarantee I'll get it all done. All right, so in making half the recipe, I'm going to take, nothing wrong with a can of cannellini beans. Now, if you want to buy northern beans and soak them, you can do that. I'm pressed for time, so I'm just using a can of cannellini beans. I'm not doing anything, I mean, have a heater on it, no big deal. So I'm going to put half of this can in there because my recipe, trust me, I'm putting half the can in. because that's my recipe. I'm gonna add the other half of the can as we cook along.
So what's the reasoning for adding the liquid from the beans in that can? I'm curious what.
I like the liquid gives the soup a little hardiness. The other beans I drain,
Okay,
but the cannellini beans I use the liquid.
okay. So if somebody has something like IBS or they're thinking about exploring a low FODMAP diet, I would recommend rinsing your beans thoroughly and going low and slow as you introduce them to see how your GI tract responds. Beans are an amazing source of fiber. And if we're introducing more fiber into our diet too, also you want to go low and slow to see if you can tolerate it. So you're not in some sort of distress. I've also read
Years of experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can,
tolerate it.
if you're cooking them from scratch, I've heard you can add a slice of kombu or seaweed to them to help with digestibility too. If you're
Interesting.
soaking your
Nice.
beans overnight will help, like a lot of vegetarians eat a lot of beans. So if you're making them from scratch, you're gonna want to soak your beans overnight with a little bit of just
Baking
soak them in
soda?
water in a bowl and then drain them the next day, and then you're going to cook them. So when you're soaking them and draining them, you're helping. So beans and other like grains, they have what's called phytic acid, which can bind some of the minerals in the food. So when we soak them ahead of time, it helps open up, for example, in the grain, it helps open up the grain a little bit. And then we rinse it, and then we rinse away some of that phytic acid that would bind minerals otherwise. So we get more of the vitamins and minerals out of those foods when we soak ahead of time. And it also cuts down on cooking time. So if you're somebody who's short on time, but you think ahead and you're able to soak the night before, that's gonna give you the most benefit.
And I've done this before. If you need to soak them and you don't have time to soak them, if you add some baking soda, that will help the process along. All about food science and pH levels and all that nonsense. But if we had to do that sometimes in a production kitchen. You need to soak beans and somebody forgot. Add baking soda and you're good. All right, so what I've done is I put half of the beans in and half of the stock. You can make your own stock, certainly. But that takes time as well. I buy my stock at the store, but I do make sure no salt added.
Yeah.
I want to control what salt goes in my product. There's some it's not marked at all, and there's some that says 33% less sodium. Just get the no salt, then you can control what goes in it. That's my philosophy.
Yeah.
I'm going to add extra vegetables to this just for color and texture. I'll show you another type of knife cut. I'm going to cut these carrots. I filled another carrot. I'm going to cut it on the bias, which means a 45-degree angle. And I think that looks good in soups. So I'll start 145-degree angle. Now this actually, funny you should mention that, that is what's known as an oblique cut. So if I were to do an oblique cut, I would cut that way, rotate it 180 and cut it again. And that looks good in stews. It gives it a nice, and there's a lot of surface area when you cut it that way. So the flavor and whatnot. But we'll just do this because this looks good in a soup. This is a bias cut, so just kind of gives it a little diagonal.
Can you really throw any sort of veggie in your soup at this point? Like after you've got the base down, you've got your liquid, you've got your mirepoix, you got some beans. Like what other vegetables could you add to this soup?
Great question. Almost any root vegetable would work. A fennel would probably be cool too if you wanted to impart some of that nice licorice type flavor. Very, very popular in the Mediterranean world. So any root vegetable or rutabaga or Sweet potato, well, that's gonna get soggy. But yeah, any other root vegetable would work. Now, this celery, I'm gonna cut a little bit bigger. Because I want to see it. So this I'm going to add in later, so you're going to actually see this in the food.
So does the fennel kind of act like a, is it similar in texture to celery? I
Yeah.
honestly haven't used it that much. I see
Yeah.
it, but I'm a little
Absolutely.
scared.
And if you go to the store and pick up a fennel bulb and give it a sniff, you'll smell licorice. It's beautiful.
So are you using the bulb or are you using kind of the stalk?
You don't use the stalk, but you do use this fennel fronds, which is a little leafy things. They almost look like dill. So you keep the fennel fronds as garnish or flavoring or an herb additive. But you cut the bulb and you dice it like a piece of celery. So it's
And fennel does get a little sweet when you cook it, right, Frank?
absolutely. It imparts that really sweet. A lot of people, some people put fennel in their tomato sauce. Anyway, but yes, any root vegetable would work. And so let me give you some alternatives here because I know I'm running short on time and I'm gonna get it all done, I swear. If you wanted to add an animal protein to this, what I would do is once I added all this stuff in here, I would take a boneless chicken breast and I would just stick it in the soup and poach it while the soup is working. Then when the chicken is done, pull the chicken out, let it cool, because if you want to cut it while it's hot, it'll just shred. So if you want pulled chicken, then cut it while it's hot. But let it cool, and then you cut it into chunks and add it back into your soup, and you have an animal protein in there, for example.
Yeah.
Another alternative, excuse me, is at the end, you might want to, if you want to add a leafy vegetable, such as a spinach, or I would use kale because it's hardier and it would stand up well to the liquid. Take the stalks off of kale and rough chop it, and then put it in your soup and let it wilt. And that's a very nice additive. And the benefits of kale, I don't need to tell you about the benefits of kale. I love it. I'm going to make some noise here because what I do to create some thickness is I have half of the stock and half of the beans. Yes, I will. I'm sorry. Now you can see. I'm going to use an immersion blender. Break this all up. Excuse me. Use an immersion blender to break this all up, and it basically helps to thicken the soup. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can put it in a regular blender and just put it back in the soup. If you don't have either of those, use a potato masher. If you don't have either of those, then just forget it. It's fine.
Yeah. So what are so
So
some
I'm going to
other-
use an immersion blender and kind of break all this up, get some natural thickness to it.
So outside of using beans to thicken soups, non-dairy ways to thicken soups or
If you're
not?
talking, I can't hear you over the blender, so hang tight.
That's okay. I'm just talking about other ways to thicken soups outside of beans. You could certainly blend a potato into soup. Cauliflower blends pretty well into soup to thicken it if you're doing like a dairy-free, maybe like a flour-free version of a thickened soup. So those are some alternative options outside of beans.
Right, back on the stove. This is where now we just put everybody back in the pool. These veggies, and I'll just save the trouble of switching cameras. The veggies that I just cut in the pool.
Question about if you were to use a blender.
Yeah.
What would you set it on?
Oh, puree. Yeah, you're gonna puree this stuff. So set your blender, excuse me, on puree. Now, the rest of the cannellini beans. Done. This is the other half of the beans from, oh, sorry, this is the other half of the beans and tomatoes from this morning. I just halved everything, put it in this bowl, in the pool. Very simple stuff. Where's my towel? What else do I have? All right, the rest of my chicken broth or stock. The difference between broth and stock. Stock is just basically the bone and water. So you roast your animal bone, and after it's roasted, you put it in a pot and with water and cook it down. That's your stock. Never any salt in stock. A soup or a broth is going to have other things in it, like vegetables and seasonings. So sometimes you use stock and broth interchangeably, but technically they are different. And let me turn up this flame, and I'm going to get this on by 5, and we'll be done, and I'll show you the finished product, which I will turn on some heat to. Nice bay leaf.
So would you put the bay leaf in at the end versus more towards the beginning?
Well, this is going to go for a couple hours, so you're going to get
Okay.
you're going to get the aromatics from the bay leaf without a problem, and the bay leaf does not emerge and blend very well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I probably didn't talk about the bean health benefits, but we could talk about it. There's so many different types of beans, so they all have a slightly different nutrient profile, but for the most part, beans can be a good source of, they could be magnesium, a little bit of calcium, some iron, obviously fiber, predominantly a carbohydrate, but they do offer some protein as well. So they cross over into that category. They can offer zinc, copper, manganese, selenium, and then some of your B vitamins. So low in calories, pretty nutrient dense, inexpensive, great way to add some carbohydrates and some fiber to your meal with low cost, and easily you can keep cans of beans in your cabinet.
There's certain things that should be in your pantry at all times, and beans are one of them. Now, if you were to do this with pasta, would you do me a favor? Go in the cabinet and get the box of ditalini. It should be on the second shelf there to the right. Thank you. If you were to do this with pasta, classic pasta fagioli, you would use some sort of small tube pasta like a ditalini. And if you did use a pasta, cook the soup, get it all ready to go, and when it's all done, take it off the heat or turn off the heat, and then add your pasta and cover it. If you cook the pasta in that, this pasta will just go into explosion mode. And you don't want that. So if
Now,
you just
Frank, do
gently
you
let the
pre-cook
pasta
the
cook.
pasta?
What's
Do you
that?
do you pre-cook the pasta?
Nope.
You let
Just-
it absorb the moisture.
Right. And then the starches will naturally thicken the soup as well. And you don't, and it'll, the pasta will keep its nice al dente flavor or texture, as opposed to putting it in now and cooking it for 2 hours. That pasta may actually just fall apart. It'll explode and fall apart. Ridiculous. So, but I'm not using pasta. In this application, I'm using barley, and I have used farro. And I asked my sous chef this morning, what would you prefer, barley or farro? So by popular demand, she picked barley. So at this point, I'm going to put in a 1/4 cup of barley. And I put it in now because that barley is going to take a bit of time to bloom and explode and get nice and soft. I like acid in my soup, especially this one. So about 2 ounces. So I'm going to put about 1 ounce in this. That's close enough. I'll taste it later. I also like a little bit of heat. If you don't like heat, leave it out. If you like a lot of heat, put more in. For my taste, I've found that a little bit of heat, just like salt, helps to pop the flavor. I don't want the sauce to be hot. I just want that warmth that kind of accentuates the flavor. So a few drops of that, not much.
So is using the acid, the vinegar, is that a way to cut the sodium content, like, and pop the flavor without adding salt to your soup?
Yes, that's exactly right. Acid is also a way that you would, if you have a fatty dish, you would also use acid
Okay.
to do that. But yes, acid is a salt. It require when you have that nice little pop of acid, it requires less salt.
Ah,
So, and you ever wonder why you serve lemon with, say, a fatty fish like a salmon or something like that? It's to cut that fat. Why do we have acids like lemon and garlic with, say, lamb? Well, lamb is a very fatty and gamey meat, and so that's the acid helps to cut that. The acid actually helps to distribute the fat in your mouth. It actually cuts it. There's a physical cutting of the fat in your mouth from a taste and texture standpoint. So let me show you this looks like now. Doesn't look like much. Can you see that on camera? It just looks like a pot of liquid. Well, this was going for several hours. And after several hours, it looks like that.
could you do a gluten-free pasta in there, or maybe like a gluten-free like buckwheat, or maybe a quinoa in there instead of the pasta? And if so, what type of gluten-free pasta would you recommend?
I don't generally buy gluten-free pasta, so I make gluten-free pasta. So
Of course you do, right?
but if you like gluten-free, I'll give you a quick.
And I know there's like corn, there's rice, there's quinoa based, there's chickpea based. I'm just curious,
Edamame.
yeah, like what would hold up probably best in the soup? And
I will tell you, if you're into gluten-free, the King Arthur gluten-free flour blend,
uh-huh.
absolutely amazing. And I've talked to other chefs and they say you just can't, this is a one-to-one substitute for regular flour and you would not know the difference. This King Arthur brand,
Gotcha.
gluten-free flour. It has rice flour, whole grain brown rice flour, sorghum flour, tapioca, starch, potato starch, cellulose, xanthan gum. Xanthan gum, a magical thing. If you do a sauce, like a butter sauce or something, and it breaks, xanthan gum pulls that right together. This flour works very well in almost any application, one-to-one, except in a yeasted dough.
Okay.
So if it calls for baking powder, baking soda, it's a one-to-one. So I have this soup. I will now change cameras and plate it, because I'm looking at a little past 5, am I? And I want to be respectful of people's time. And let's make sure we do that.
So I like that you threw the barley in there, because I think that gives it another opportunity to create a different nutrient profile.
Yeah, I do a lot with, matter of fact, I'm doing a demo in a couple of weeks, and where I'm going to make a risotto, and I'm going to use arborio rice, but I have used farro, and basically, so it's a farroto, is what it is. Risotto is a cooking technique rather than just confined to rice. And that's another demonstration. So I don't like to overfill the plate. Here's the finished product I made this morning. Now, given that we are a Mediterranean house and I do a lot of fusion cooking, you might do a little grated cheese on this, but I choose crumbled feta. So we will do that. Get a
Could you
little
hit it with some like fresh herbs or something too, like on top, like a sprinkle of something fresh, like maybe like a parsley, an Italian parsley?
Sure, and you know, when I talk about the fennel prawns, if
Uh-huh.
you have the fennel prawns, you could just put the fennel prawns right up on top of that if you wanted as well.
Okay, so that's like an additional serving of like of vegetables when you think about it, when you're using fresh herbs and spices. So those are like concentrated nutrient powerhouses. So if you can use as many spices and herbs, especially fresh in your cooking, you're going to improve the vitamins and minerals in your food.
And no good Italian soup is complete without some nice homemade Italian bread, which I happen to have made a baguette. And now another knife skill. Here's a serrated knife, like cutting that on the bias as well. And there is your pasta fagioli,
Yum,
which is dinner tonight, right, Helen?
yum.
Yes.
Now I would add even a drizzle of olive oil.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Of extra virgin olive oil.
I'll get this is where you would use the extra virgin olive oil. So this is extra virgin olive oil, just a little drizzle on top to shine it up.
Yeah, like a nice like dark green color, would you say?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but yes, it's a literally an olive green, if you can to be pun. Now, I also make, you can make an herb oil, and I'm running out, but just take some extra virgin olive oil, whatever herbs you want, simmer it for about 10 minutes, let it cool, and strain it, and then put it in a squeeze bottle. And this is a basil garlic oil. So you could actually, if you had a flavored oil, you could do that. And that is pasta fagioli.
Yum. Are you going to be delivering it to all the participants?
Yeah, I'll take 2.
Yeah, they can drive to Delaware. That's it. Happy to entertain questions or comments or the other thing I'd like to poll is there anything in particular you'd like to see next?
That looks delicious.
It looks so amazing. You know what was so fun to hear about from both of you is thinking about each of these ingredients and how we utilize them. Like when we all crave salt and sugar, right? And so thinking about carrots as sugar instead of adding sugar, and thinking about using celery and an acid to give us that salt satisfaction rather than adding extra salt or something else. So it's such cool insight that we can utilize not only cooking something like the soup, but in cooking other things as well.
Yeah. We're all just salivating. Sorry.
It's actually I'm gonna go ahead and taste it. I'm sorry.
That's perfect.
Oh dear God.
Now,
I'm sorry for interrupting. In my house, when I was growing up, there was an expression, oh my God, that is so good. In my house, there was an expression that the food was so good, if that was the last thing you did before you died, your life would be complete. So you eat the food, you say, now I can die. So I ate this, and that's the first thing that went to my head is, now I can die.
Not today.
But not today. First I gotta clean the kitchen. Then I can die. Additional questions, comments, challenges.
I challenge all of our participants to make this at home for themselves and their families.
And if you do, send me a picture. Tell me how it turned out. Tell me if you did any modifications, additives, subtractions. You might even wilt some spinach in that too. But if you're doing that, put the spinach in at the very end. Otherwise, it'll just mush. So you just want to put the spinach in, and it'll literally wilt in 30 seconds, and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I love adding like a dark leafy green to the end of soups. It's honestly, it's like one of the few ways my kids will eat kale or collards when it's in a soup, because I think the texture just changes and it just makes it more bearable to them. But
Oh, yeah, I mean, the
but yeah,
texture.
I love adding it to a soup. I think it just gives it a little extra and color, like for the
Yeah.
eyes. You eat with your eyes.
Absolutely, and like the texture of the vegetables that you need. Yeah, this actually, um, this is pretty good. And it's great on a winter evening. Now on this bread, if you want to learn how to make bread, I can do that, but that's kind of an all-day affair. But that's my Italian baguette, which I love to do. So I have everybody's contact information. So I will go ahead and in the next day or so, send out the presentation and a link to the video that you can use. And whoever wants to contact me about exercising a coupon for services, I'd be happy to chat with you about them.
This is fantastic. We will make sure we post it up on our website as well so that people can watch it down the road, or those who weren't able to make it tonight can watch it. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It is always so enjoyable and inspiring. We really appreciate your time. And Courtney, your commentary is so great and so helpful. I think we all learned not only is it heart healthy, but immune boosting. So guys, consider reaching out, have Frank come to your house. What a better, can't think of a more fun night than to have Frank prepare you and your friends a meal.
Yeah, we call that fine dining in your own home. So you don't have to go out, you just work on a menu with you, and I just come into your home and you're a customer of one.
That sounds so fun. And all those out there who want to kind of meet with Courtney and see how you might make modifications to your own eating plan for whatever goals that you might have, give us a call. We'll connect you with her.
Oh, I'd be happy to serve you guys. So thank you. This was fun. Thank you so much.
Super fun.
Excellent. All right. With that said, feel free to contact me directly. But with that said, I'm going to end the recording.